Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is July 8th. July has its daytime garden, but it has an evening garden too. The air cools, the fragrance changes, colors fade into the background, and white flowers begin to glow. Gardeners Joe Eck and Wayne Winterroad of the famed North Hill Garden in Vermont described the evening garden beautifully. They wrote, "On a moonlit night in July, nothing would keep us from rambling around the garden after supper. For in July, the garden is rich with plants that are fragrant only at night. Most of them white, eerie lanterns in the dark." Though the night-scented phlox, Zeluzianskia capensis, will begin to open its flowers around 5 p.m., it is not until it is truly dark that its fragrance will begin to creep in the kitchen door. A large pot of it sits just outside the kitchen on the terrace, and the smell of it, rather like a raspberry tart with almond crust, comes like dessert at the end of dinner, replacing the sweets we no longer eat. Yes, there's something about July gardens after the sun goes down. They do become quieter, but also somehow more themselves. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1621 that the French poet Jean de La Fontaine was born in Chateau Thierry, France. His father was the master of waters and forests, the royal official responsible for the rivers and woodlands of the region. And that's how Jean grew up, walking forests. He learned the names of trees. He watched birds, foxes, and rabbits. Later, he would write that everything in nature has its own language. As a young man, he inherited his father's post, and he spent nearly 20 years working in those same woods. Then, in 1658, Jean entered the household of Nicolas Fouquet, whose magnificent estate at Vaux-le-Vicomte was becoming the finest garden in France. Its designer was André Lenotre, the landscape architect who would later create Versailles. Watching that great garden take shape, Jean imagined something no one else had. He imagined that gardening deserved its own muse. In a poem called The Dream of Vaux, he introduced Orthésie, the fairy of gardens. Up until that moment, painting had a muse, poetry had a muse, and music had a muse. But gardening did not. Centuries later, the French garden historian Monique Mosset borrowed Jean de La Fontaine's name to describe the artistic soul of a garden, the part that is neither horticulture nor engineering, but simply art. Jean went on to become one of the greatest fabulists in France. He gave us the oak and the reed, the grasshopper and the ant, and so many other creatures who still have something to teach us. But I like to remember him as the forester's son who believed gardens deserved their own muse. And it was on this day in 1794 that the English Quaker and botanist James Backhouse was born in Darlington, England. As a young man, James became ill with tuberculosis. His family sent him outdoors to recover. An uncle introduced him to a lead miner named John Banks, a man who knew every rare plant growing on the limestone hills of Upper Teesdale. Together they walked. The fresh air, the long days, and the plants themselves helped restore James's health. He never forgot that. By 1815, James and his brother Thomas bought an old nursery in York, and within a few years, it was thriving. But then tragedy struck. In December of 1827, James's wife, Deborah, died. She was 34. Then, within a few weeks, Thomas's wife also died. The two brothers found themselves widowers, raising young children. 4 years later, James made an astonishing decision. Believing he'd been called to serve, he left England for Australia. He expected to be gone a few years. He was away for nearly 10. Wherever he traveled, James preached. He cared for prisoners, he visited the sick, and he also collected plants, seeds, pressed flowers, herbarium specimens, and he sent them all home to England, where botanists and gardeners studied them. He also spoke openly against the treatment of Aboriginal Australians and argued that punishment alone could never prevent crime. After Australia, James traveled through South Africa, helping to establish a school open to children of every race. It was an extraordinary idea in 1840. When James finally returned home, he expanded the family nursery into one of England's largest. Later, the Australian botanist Ferdinand von Mueller honored James by naming the genus Backhousea in his honor. One species, Backhousea citriodora, is better known as lemon myrtle, and its leaves release an extraordinary fragrance, often described as more lemon than lemon. It's a fitting legacy for a man whose own life was restored by walking among plants. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear a garden diary entry written on this day, July 8th in 1994, by the Scottish writer Katherine Stewart from her book, A Garden in the Hills. Katherine lived in the Highlands near Loch Ness, where weather was always part of the story. She wrote, "An evening so cold that the windows were steamed as though with frost. The bees have a feel for the weather more accurate than all the technology down south. And this means they're having to consume most of what they make in order to stay alive." Then her attention turned to the wildflowers: bird's-foot trefoil, lady's mantle, bedstraw, and hawkweed. She confessed, "I'm tempted to let them all grow on and have a meadow. But space is needed for ball games when the children come." A little later on, Katherine remembered the English naturalist W.H. Hudson, who once wrote, "I am not a lover of lawns. Rather, I would see daisies in their thousands." And then finally, Katherine thought of Lori Lee's mother, who welcomed self-seeders, forced nothing, and was, quote, "the enemy of very few weeds." I like that phrase, the enemy of very few weeds. There are places in every garden, I think, and I think Katherine would have agreed, where nature deserves the last word. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Pleasure Gardens of Virginia by Peter Martin. This week's book recommendations follow the theme of historic American gardens, and today we travel back to colonial Virginia. Peter Martin was the garden historian for colonial Williamsburg, and in this classic book, he traces the rise of ornamental gardening from Jamestown to Jefferson. But what has always stayed with me is something he wrote in the preface. He reminds us that gardens are among the most fragile works of art. He wrote, "Unlike most other works of art, gardens cannot be preserved by museums and libraries. 1 season can modify a garden. 5 can alter it in major ways. 10 can destroy it. 1 season, 5, 10, gone. That's why garden history matters. It reminds us of places that flowers alone could never preserve. The Pleasure Gardens of Virginia by Peter Martin. It's a beautiful book about gardens that almost disappeared. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1995 that Maggie Keswick Jenks died in London. She was 53. Maggie grew up between Scotland and China, where she fell in love with Chinese gardens. She believed a garden was never just a beautiful place. Instead, it was a place that helped people find their bearings. Years later, after studying architecture and writing a landmark book on Chinese gardens, Maggie was diagnosed with breast cancer. For several years, she lived with the disease. Then, one afternoon, after hearing that the cancer had returned, she and her husband were asked to wait in a hospital corridor. No windows, fluorescent lights, patients sitting quietly, each carrying their own fear. That moment changed Maggie's life. Later, Maggie wrote that people in those spaces begin to wilt. It was a gardener's word. Maggie believed people needed light, air, trees, a kitchen, a place to sit, and a window looking out onto something alive. So she imagined a different kind of cancer center, not just a place for treatment, a place for living. Maggie finished those plans just weeks before she died. The first Maggie Center opened the following year. Today, there are dozens around the world. Every one has a garden. The afternoon before she died, friends helped Maggie into her own garden. She turned her face toward the sun. Then she smiled and said, "Aren't we lucky?" I think about that every time I step outside and feel the warmth of the sun on my face. As we close the show today, remember, after supper tonight, visit your garden for just a little while. The July garden puts on a whole new attitude after the sun goes down. It's still the same garden, but somehow it feels different. Less vibrant, but more content. Less colorful, but more relaxed. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.